Have you noticed how some people have an almost supernatural control over everything around them without saying a single word? They don't scream, they don't beg, they simply withdraw, and suddenly everything changes. The energy shifts. People start questioning, pursuing, feeling. Imagine if you did the same thing. If you stopped reacting immediately to everything. If you chose silence instead of automatic responses. Jung discovered something that will change your life forever. And in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to reveal exactly how to apply it. Let's start with a truth that probably no one has told you with this clarity. You've been programmed to always be available. Since you were a child, you were taught that your worth as a person depends on how accessible you are to others. You respond to messages immediately, even when you're exhausted. You say yes when your body screams no. You explain yourself, justify yourself, defend yourself as if you owed something to the entire world. But here's the brutal reality that Jung understood better than anyone. This excessive availability isn't a virtue. It's a prison. And as long as you keep believing that you need to be accessible all the time, emotionally or otherwise, you will be manipulated, exhausted, and forgotten as soon as you're no longer useful. You know why? Because being always available makes you completely predictable. And everything that is predictable becomes a tool. People start using you like an emotional emergency button. They press it when they want attention, relief, validation, and then they put you back on the shelf until the next crisis. Jung spoke about something he called the persona, that mask we wear to be accepted and loved. It's exactly this mask that keeps you excessively available. The more you place yourself at the center of others' stage, the more you disappear from your own. Being available all the time is a subtle form of self-abandonment. Let me give you a concrete example. Think about that person who always seeks you out when they're in trouble, but who disappears when you need support, or that partner who only values you when you solve something for them, or that friend who calls you at any hour expecting you to drop everything to attend to them. Sound familiar? Right now, I want you to do this exercise. Close your eyes for a second and ask yourself, when was the last time you said no without feeling guilt? When was the last time you didn't respond to a message immediately because you simply didn't feel like it? If you can't remember, it's because you've been living for others instead of living for yourself. The people who want you available all the time don't actually want you. They want what you provide: validation, companionship, distraction, emotional comfort. But when you change, when you establish a boundary, when you refuse to react, those same people get irritated, accuse you, say you've changed. It's not because you've actually changed. It's because you stopped being functional for them. And here's the cruelest point of all. The more available you are, the less value others give you. Because what is too abundant becomes common. Nobody respects what they don't have to earn. Nobody values what is always there waiting. If this message is starting to resonate with you, like this video and subscribe to the channel, because what's coming next is going to completely change your perspective on relationships and personal power. But excessive availability isn't just a relationship problem, it's an energy problem. Jung didn't see the human psyche as a machine that reacts automatically without consequences. For him, our mind is like an energy system, and every thought, emotion, and action consumes a part of that energy. The crucial question is this: are you consciously choosing where your energy goes, or are you letting the world decide for you? Every time you react impulsively, you're wasting psychic energy. When you defend yourself against criticism that didn't even deserve attention, when you respond to a provocation just to prove you're right, when you get involved in useless arguments, when you try to please those who don't value you, you're spending your inner strength on what doesn't nourish you. Jung was very clear about this. What you resist persists. The more you react, the more you bind yourself. People who live emotionally exhausted aren't weak, they're misdirected. And you know what happens to someone who lives exhausted? They become vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you become easy prey. Manipulative, opportunistic, and emotionally needy people can sense this. They notice that you don't know how to guard your energy, that you react to everything, that you're always trying to fix the world and they take advantage of it. Let me paint you a scenario you've surely lived. It's 11 at night, you're exhausted, and you receive a message from someone who wants to vent to you. Your instinct tells you that you need to rest, but your programming to always be available makes you respond. You spend 2 hours in a conversation that completely drains you, and the next day you feel like a truck ran over you. How many times have you lost sleep over an unresolved conversation? How many times have you spent hours ruminating about what you should have said or trying to understand why someone treated you badly? This is energy that drains without return. You're keeping alive ghosts that should have died long ago. Jung said that a healthy psyche is one that knows how to maintain energy within the system. This means knowing how to say no without guilt, knowing how to remain silent without feeling cowardly, knowing how to observe before acting. Because true power isn't in reacting, it's in choosing when and how to act. Here's a powerful exercise I want you to practice this very week. Before responding to any message, any call, any request, take a 30-second pause. Breathe deeply and ask yourself, does responding to this nourish me or drain me? Does this person deserve my energy at this moment? If the answer is no, simply don't respond. Don't explain yourself. Don't justify yourself. Simply choose to preserve your energy. Psychic energy is like a force field. When it's well guarded, it creates presence. You enter a room and command respect without saying a word. But when it's poorly managed, you become invisible, reactive, fragile, and the world has no mercy for those who give in easily. That's why you need to start observing your own triggers. What makes you react automatically? What makes you lose your center? These are exactly the points where your energy leaks, and that's where you need to work. Not to become cold or indifferent, but to be selective, to be sovereign over yourself. And when you conserve your energy, something incredible starts to happen. You break the projections that others place on you. And that bothers a lot, because now we're entering a dark territory that few understand. Silent manipulation. You think you're in control of your reactions. You believe your emotional responses are conscious choices, but the truth is much darker. Most of your responses are programmed, and those who understand this manipulate you without you realizing it. Opportunistic people don't need to raise their voice, threaten, or force situations. They simply activate the buttons you've left exposed, and you react in the same predictable way over and over again. Jung called this projection the psychological mechanism through which people project onto others what they cannot see in themselves. But there's another side to this phenomenon that few notice. While others project onto you, you also become the receptacle for these images. And the more emotionally available you are, the more you become a blank canvas for these projections. Do you know that friend who only approaches when they're in crisis? That partner who always needs you to save the day? That person who praises you, but only while you're useful to them? None of this is coincidental. They're not really relating to you. They're relating to the idea of you, to the role you accept to play. And why do you accept it? Because you're afraid of disappointing, afraid of not being loved, afraid of being abandoned. The most effective manipulation doesn't happen in screaming. It happens in the silence of guilt. When you feel you owe something to the other, when you believe you need to be available, need to help, need to understand, even when it destroys you inside. Here's the central point that Jung understood perfectly. The manipulator doesn't need to control you directly. They only need you to keep reacting the same way. But when you stop reacting, the game breaks completely. Let me give you a specific example. Imagine someone sends you a message full of emotional drama, expecting you to immediately drop everything to console them. Traditionally, you run to respond, to resolve, to calm. But this time, you simply read the message and don't respond for 2 hours. What do you think happens? The person gets desperate, calls you, sends you more messages, even gets angry with you. This reaction tells you everything. They weren't looking for real support. They were looking for emotional control. They were using their crisis as a way to activate your automatic response. When you don't respond immediately, they lose that control and their true nature is revealed. When you start saying no, responding with silence, withdrawing instead of explaining yourself, the projections begin to crumble. The mask they put on you falls, and this leaves people bewildered because they no longer know who you are. And worse still, now they're forced to look at themselves. Here's a revealing exercise you can do this very week. The next time someone tries to provoke an emotional reaction from you, simply respond, "I understand your point of view," and change the subject. Or better yet, simply don't respond at all. Watch how that person reacts. Their reaction will tell you exactly what kind of relationship they had with you. Your unavailability is a threat because it forces others to confront their own emptiness. The silence you offer reveals the internal noise they don't want to hear. And then comes the attack, the criticism, the emotional drama. Not because you're wrong, but because you stopped serving as a convenient mirror. Jung said something profound. We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you withdraw, when you stop feeding the cycle, the other's shadow begins to emerge. And this is unbearable for those who have always used you as an escape. But here comes the most important question. Are you ready to deal with the discomfort of being misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked for protecting yourself? Are you ready to endure the silence that comes after the break? Because it's precisely in that silence where a new kind of power is born. And about that transformative power of silence is exactly what I want to talk to you about now, because this is where everything changes. The modern world is noisy. Everyone wants to be heard, wants to respond quickly, wants to win meaningless debates and prove their point, even if it costs them their own peace. But there's a power that few know and even fewer master, the power of silence. I'm not talking about the silence of passivity or cowardice. I'm talking about conscious, strategic, brutally lucid silence. The kind of silence that isn't absence, but amplified presence. Jung saw silence not as a void, but as fertile ground for inner transformation. When you stop reacting, you begin to observe, and by observing, you see patterns that previously went unnoticed. Emotional repetitions, manipulation games, self-sabotage cycles. Silence allows lucidity, and lucidity is dangerous for those who live to control you. Have you noticed how some people panic when you don't respond? When you don't explain yourself? When you simply disappear? It's not because they actually miss you, it's because your silence takes away their narrative control. While you're talking, you're still in the game. But when you're silent, you change the rules completely. True silence isn't the absence of voice. It's mastery over your own energy. It's the refusal to be dragged by another person's emotions. It's the conscious choice not to participate in battles that aren't worth your wear. Jung understood that individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, requires this distancing. Only in silence can you hear yourself without the constant interference of the external world. Only in silence can you distinguish between what you really feel and what you've been taught to feel. Let me tell you about Maria, a client who completely transformed her life by applying this principle. For years, Maria was everyone's confidant. Her phone rang constantly with people who wanted to vent to her. She felt important, needed, but was completely exhausted. One day, she decided to experiment. For an entire week, she didn't respond immediately to any non-urgent message. She waited at least 2 hours before answering anything. You know what happened? Some people got angry, others accused her of having changed, but those who really valued her respected her space. Maria discovered that she could help others without sacrificing her own peace. She learned that temporary silence didn't make her less available, it made her more selective. But I warn you, silence has a price. It will distance you from people who only valued you for the role you played. It will make you incomprehensible to those who only saw you through their own projections. It will make you seem cold, distant, even arrogant to some. But all this is simply a reaction from those who never wanted to deal with your depth, only with your utility. And here's the hard truth that Jung understood. The more emotionally mature you become, the more selective you become with your words, because you understand that every sentence is an energetic investment, and not everyone deserves access to your truth. Here's a powerful mantra: I want you to repeat every morning for the next 30 days. My silence is sacred. My energy is valuable. Not everyone deserves access to my inner world. Repeat it until it becomes part of you. Sometimes silence isn't withdrawal, it's sovereignty. It's the language of those who no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Silence is uncomfortable for others because it forces them to deal with their own thoughts, with their own internal noise. And this discomfort reveals more about them than any argument of yours could reveal. You don't need to explain your absence. It explains itself, and those who feel threatened by it reveal how much they depended on your imbalance to maintain their own control. But the most powerful silence isn't the one that disturbs the other. It's the silence that rebuilds you from within. It's in this internal space, free from the constant demands of others, where you begin to recover your vital energy, to reconnect with your essence, to remember who you were before the world told you who you should be. And this brings us to the most practical and transformative point of all: how to develop the emotional discipline necessary to make this a reality in your life. If you're finding value in this message, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes a video like this can completely change the course of a person's life. It's useless to understand all this intellectually if in practice you continue saying yes when you want to say no, responding to messages that bother you, participating in empty conversations, and maintaining relationships that only exist by inertia. Awareness without action is just another form of self-deception. True transformation begins when you firmly decide to become selective. And this requires something Jung considered fundamental: emotional discipline. It's not about repressing your emotions. It's about consciously choosing which ones are worth expressing and when. Conscious unavailability isn't about being cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It's about stopping being accessible to anyone at any time for any reason. It's about taking control of your own energy, your own time, your own peace. And this begins with small but powerful actions. Not responding immediately to every message, breathing deeply before reacting to a provocation, leaving a discussion before being dragged into chaos, turning off your phone without feeling guilt, saying "I'm not available right now" without giving elaborate explanations. But here's the most important part that most people don't understand. You don't need to justify your absence. You don't need to explain your silence. You don't owe anything to anyone other than yourself. And this, for many people, is unforgivable, because when you refuse to explain yourself, you take away the other's power to keep you within an emotional narrative where you're always the helpful, understanding, accessible one. Jung understood that every individuation process goes through isolation, but not depressive isolation, sacred isolation, a time of inner retreat where you relearn to listen to your own voice without the interference of the world, where you rebuild your identity, not based on others' gaze, but from your own center. Here's a practical exercise that can change your life if you apply it consistently. For the next 15 days, you're going to implement what I call the 3 sacred pauses. First pause: before responding to any message, count to 10 and ask yourself if you really need to respond now or if it can wait. Second pause: before saying yes to any request, breathe deeply and ask yourself if this brings you closer to or further from your inner peace. Third pause: before explaining or justifying yourself, stop and consider if the other person really deserves an explanation or if you're simply giving in to your programming to please. Want to know an infallible thermometer to measure your evolution? Watch who starts distancing themselves from you when you become more reserved. Watch who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Watch who accuses you of having changed when you finally start protecting yourself. These aren't signs that you're wrong. They're irrefutable proof that you've begun to free yourself. They're evidence that you've stopped being functional for those who only valued you for what you could give them. Being unavailable is uncomfortable at first. You'll feel guilty. You'll think you're being selfish. You'll hear that you're being too harsh. But this is a natural part of the deconstruction process. You've spent your life being conditioned to put yourself second. It's natural that change causes discomfort, not only in you, but in all those who benefited from your old version. But here's the liberating truth. Conscious unavailability is the foundation of self-determination. When you say no to the world, you're saying yes to yourself. When you withdraw from a toxic environment, you're reaffirming that your peace is worth more than any false connection. And when you stop constantly explaining yourself, you begin to be respected, even if by few. But not everyone is ready for this type of presence, because your emotional absence will expose wounds they don't want to face. It will reveal how much they depended on your emotional chaos to feel in control. And it's at this moment that the inevitable break comes. And with the break comes pain, loneliness, estrangement, the feeling that you're losing something, when in reality you're only freeing yourself. And from this liberation emerges something beautiful, your rebirth. When you stop being available to everyone, something profound and transformative begins to happen in your life. First comes silence. An uncomfortable silence that seems to scream inside you. You wonder if you did the right thing, if you're being too harsh, if you're losing people who really mattered to you. But gradually, this silence transforms. It begins to clean, to calm, to heal wounds you didn't even know you had. And then comes solitude, but not the solitude of absence. It's the solitude of total presence, your own. The solitude of the strong, the solitude of one who no longer betrays themselves to keep others close. In that space where once there was confusion, clarity enters. Where once there was constant anxiety, a peace you didn't know was possible enters. Where once there was desperate need for approval, a new kind of strength enters. The strength of being complete within yourself. Jung said that the individuation process, becoming who you really are, requires that you distance yourself from the collective, that you disidentify from the social mask, that you walk alone for a while. And that's exactly what you're doing when you decide to become consciously unavailable. You're not running from the world. You're returning to yourself. It's at this crucial point that you stop being an automatic reactor and become a conscious creator of your own reality. You stop being molded by external circumstances and begin to mold your life from your interior. The people who feel uncomfortable with your new absence reveal a painful but liberating truth. They never really wanted you. They wanted the role you played in their lives. They wanted the function you fulfilled for them. And now that you no longer fit that mold, they don't know what to do with you. And that paradoxically is completely liberating. You'll lose people, yes, but you'll find yourself. You'll distance yourself from places that drain you, but you'll reconnect with your deepest essence. You'll become misunderstood by many, but you'll finally start being respected by those who really matter. Because when you're no longer available for anything, when you're no longer predictable, when you can no longer be easily manipulated, you become valuable, rare, unforgettable. You become someone who must be earned, not simply used. This is a true rebirth, a new beginning, the start of a life where you're no longer available for emotional crumbs, for mind games, for emptiness disguised as affection. Now you only accept what resonates with your peace, with your truth, with your deepest integrity. And don't fool yourself thinking this will be easy. There will be days when you'll want to return to your old way of being, days when loneliness will feel too heavy, days when you'll doubt if this path is worth it. But every time you respect your boundaries, every time you choose your peace over others' comfort, every time you stand firm in your new emotional territory, you become stronger. Because true self-love isn't a pretty feeling that arrives when everything is fine. It's an iron decision you make every day to choose yourself, even when it costs you being alone, even when others don't understand it, even when the whole world seems to pressure you to go back to who you were before. Jung understood something that modern psychology often overlooks. Becoming oneself isn't a comfortable process. It requires the symbolic death of who you thought you were to allow the birth of who you really are. And in that death and rebirth, in that profound transformation, you discover something that no external relationship can give you. The fullness that comes from being complete with yourself. If you've made it this far, it's because a deep part of you is already ready for this new path. A part of you has already understood that being loved for playing a role means nothing if to maintain that love, You have to completely abandon yourself. True love, genuine respect, authentic connection only come when you have the courage to be exactly who you are, without masks, without performances, without being available to those who don't deserve access to your inner world. So I ask you directly, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, or even hated in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being authentically yourself? Are you prepared to exchange superficial connections for deep peace? If this message has touched something inside you, if something has resonated with your deepest truth, I want you to write in the comments, I choose my peace. Let's see how many people here are really ready for this transformation. And if you feel this video can help someone else awaken to their personal power, share it. Sometimes a single conversation, a single video, can be the catalyst someone needs to completely change the course of their life. Subscribe to this channel if you want more content that helps you build an authentic and powerful life from the inside out. Hit the bell to not miss any video that could transform your perspective. Remember, you didn't come to this world to be comfortable for others. You came to be completely, authentically, unapologetically yourself. And that process begins the day you choose your peace above everything else.